Welcome to Beyond Broth's first summit, Nurturing a New World from Chaos to Goodness. I'm Grace Ventura, founder and creator of Beyond Broth. Joining us today is another beautiful human who is just in service on this planet. Her name is Lopa van der Merch. Did I get that right?
Van der Merch, yeah.
Van der Merch, okay, great. It kind of, I had to let it roll out of my mouth.
Yes, exactly, it just rolls, yeah.
And we're going to be having a conversation about using adaptogenic herbs for resilience during stressful times. I mean, who isn't feeling stressed? So wow, that's just such a rich topic. And I'm so excited to be having this opportunity with you today. Just to say a little bit more about Lopa. I met her, I guess it was a couple of years ago. It's been a couple of years.
Yeah.
And we've kind of been following, walking alongside each other in the organic or food entrepreneurial sector of the world. So that's how I know her. But I immediately felt this just such a heart connection with her. And so that's how I know her. And just a little bit about her is she's been a lifelong seeker. I love this, of boundless energy, She spent most of her 20s studying and practicing in a tantric yoga lineage while co-founding 2 sustainable energy startups. So she's all about energy, right? Energy woman. After having her first child, she knew she'd needed deeper energy than the superficial spike coffee gives. So the alternatives weren't really inspiring. So she partnered with an herbalist to create rasa, which is a coffee alternative that nourishes the core system of your body so that you can access deep, sustainable energy. Yeah, I mean, we all need energy and relaxation, both alike. Which brings us really
energy too.
Yeah. And that's really the topic, which is how do we really handle our stress? How do we navigate all the stress that's happening on so many levels? Everyone is feeling it. So when we talk, I'm going to hand this to you, but the question that I think about is in using adaptogenic herbs and in using, that's part of it, is using something to help our stress. And then there's, the day in and day out, and you as a mom and, an entrepreneur and, having a family and everything you do, it's like, how do you navigate that?
Yeah. Yeah, I think, it's adaptogenic herbs are a gateway. It's about, and I can go into what adaptogens are and all of that, but I think the core thing that I want people to understand is that there's actually no quick fix. And and adaptogenic herbs aren't going to be that quick fix either, but because of the way that they work in your body, it gives you just a little bit more of that buffer zone. And what you need to do is then take that buffer to make the decisions that are going to support your overall lifestyle, lifestyle changes that are going to support your health and your lack, reducing your stress. So adaptogens are not a substitute for a healthy lifestyle. And I would argue that modern culture inherently is not a healthy lifestyle for most of us. And that comes to the level of information overload that we're all going through, the level of stress that, you know, most of us are handling, even right down to receiving a text message is still an alert to our system. And it's still this like, is this going to be good or is it going to be bad? Or what is it, you know, is it something I have to do? Is it a, you know, and we're constantly bombarded with some form of text message, some form of notification, some form of asking for our energy.
Yes.
And we have to be a bit protective and a bit careful and conscious about how we engage with the infiltration of technology and the infiltration of the always onness of modern life. And that's something that I'm, you know, constantly dealing with, especially as a mom and an entrepreneur. And I mean, like the level of always onness is unlimited. Like I could give every single thing I have, and I have done that, and still it not be enough for either my children or for my business. And so it's we have to realize that we have to cultivate energy so that we can spend it so that we can be in service to the things that we want to be in service to, and so that we can be that change that we want to see in the world. And so I see using adaptogenic herbs as that first kind of the gateway drug to having a more healthy and sustainable lifestyle. And there are a lot of little different things that you can do for that. And I'll talk about more of those as we go along.
Yes, you have said several things that are just great topics, you know, great topics that we could talk about for quite a while.
Yeah.
Everything from, you know, the energy demands and how we navigate that, how we hold our boundaries, how we, I mean, it's just one thing after the other that you just mentioned. And I said, uh-oh, how many topics?
Yeah.
Because it's so interconnected. That's the point. It's so interconnected. I know that this topic about being resilient in these stressful times and how we can best navigate that. And this is, you know, the gateway. And I would like you to share something about adaptogenic herbs, because I think, you know, this is that's the topic here that we're talking about. And I think that plants and plant medicine is very much reflective and indicative of, you know, a quality of energy.
Yeah.
So I know that's a whole other topic.
Well, as well. But I think an important one, especially as relates to adaptogens, and if you go, there's a lot of different access points to understand these herbs and these plants and the medicine that they give. But since you brought that up, these are plants specifically that grow in very intense environments, from very high altitude to, like, you see them growing out of rocks to, you know, places with like really dry deserts. So all of them have this sort of unique quality of thriving in stressful situations. These are plants that have this energy of like, nope, this is just where I'm planted and I will blossom. And when we take that resilience into our system, like it's not even stressful to them. That's home for them. They're happy there. So when we take that into our bodies, we also take that intelligence of learning how to thrive in stressful situations. And you know, there was a really interesting TED Talk some time ago, and I don't remember the speaker, but talking about how reframing our perspective around stress, and actually seeing it as there are ways that it can be a good thing, and so that we stop seeing life and stress as kind of attacking us, but more like, okay, here's all these opportunities to grow and develop my capacity and to build healthy boundaries and to all of these things. So it starts, you know, this mental shift. It can be inspired by just taking these plants into our body. And also there's my tea teacher, I study tea ceremony, and he talks about how plant medicine requires participation. It's not like a pharmaceutical, like if you take a Valium, it's going to have this effect, whether or not you're paying attention, whether or not like you're going to have the thing. But plants work on a much more holistic level. And so you kind of have to show up to the process a little bit. And, you know, if you're very sensitive, you might feel it automatically no matter what, but there does have to be this kind of showing up process. So it's not like you just take the plant and then you're like, oh, stress is bad.
Oh my gosh, I love it. It's like plants support self-responsibility.
Yes.
They support self-responsibility. And one of the things I think about with what you're saying is that people could take the same plant and they have different responses. They have different tolerance. Just what you were talking about. And I find I love what you're talking about, because it's like the plant is giving you the information if you listen. Well, what a beautiful concept. What a beautiful concept.
Yeah, it's a conversation more than a monologue with like a drug per se. A drug is a bit of a monologue, and a plant is a bit of a dialogue between you and the plant. And there's an alchemy there, and how much you participate and how much you show up to that communication is going to be a huge contributor to how much you feel the benefits.
I love it. I'm just, that concept is so stunning, because we are so interrelated on this planet. You know, we are all part of this biome, macro, and, you know, all these micro parts. I also love what you were saying about adaptogens, how they grow in such tough environments, you know, and the concept that it isn't stress to them, and how, you know, one could flip their point of view that we aren't, you know, how we conceive of stress, that it's just a thought, a belief, and that belief really colors how we respond.
Yeah.
You know, it's just, it's a great, beautiful concept that is so interrelated with everything I think about.
Yeah.
So it's beautiful.
Yeah. And that belief, our acceptance of what is, it dictates whether or not we're suffering. And so, and that's not to say that you should just kind of like sit down and accept whatever happens and just let it go by. And you like, don't tolerate abuse and don't tolerate unhealthy circumstances and dynamics in your life. But if you can accept it, you know, it's about spheres of influence, that old prayer, accept, you know, God grant me the serenity to accept the things that I cannot change, to change the things that the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And that, you know, so much is encapsulated right there. So like what actions can we actually change? What things can we change? And sometimes we don't realize that it might be as simple as, like, do you really need to scroll Facebook at night? You know, like, is that really contributing to your health? And you might think it doesn't have that much of an impact. And then suddenly you turn it off for a little while and you see what happens when you just don't have your phone from 9 to 10 p.m. And you're like, oh, wait, actually that was having a big impact on my mental health and all the rest. So looking at those things that you can change, which might sometimes be subtle, and sometimes we're not aware of the ways that we're impacting our lives in the behaviors that we develop and the habits that we develop. And then also just seeing the things that are really outside of our sphere of influence to be able to change, and then learning to accept that, and learning to accept the stresses that those are. Like, it's just going to be stressful to have, you know, a startup. That is, there's not a lot you can do about that. You can work with it. There are certain things that you can change, but there's also just this dynamic. It's going to constantly feel like too much. And so like, can you surrender into that a little bit and let that, what?
And breathe.
And breathe. Exactly. I feel like breath is the greatest tool that I know of for resilience is presence. And the greatest tool that I know of for presence is breath. And so we always have access to that. It's free. Don't have to buy anything.
You know, though, I have to say, I was at a dance class recently and I had to wear a mask and I couldn't breathe. And I started thinking about, I know this is a little off topic, but just hold on one second. I was thinking about how um, our breath is, air, this element of air. And it's how we first entered this planet is with a breath, right? And we take our last until we die. And there's something about the controlling of breath with masks that's a very fascinating thing right now.
Yeah, I definitely relate to that. I actually went into my osteopath who had this mask on, and he had this tube going out from the mask to something on his arm, and it was a HEPA filter. And he was like, I was like, you look like a Borg. And he was like, yes, but I'm breathing so much better because I'm not, I was like, oh, that makes sense. The mask thing, we are breathing in our exhaust fumes, literally.
We are. And it's creating a lot of, I think, stress, actually.
Totally. It feels stressful.
Fear. It feels like fear.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. When I'm in stores for a little while and I've got it on, and I'm like, wow, I just need a clean breath, and then I'm like, okay, whew. Yeah. So yeah, I think that's another level of stress that we're all dealing with. Like, I mean, here's the thing, modern life is stressful enough already. And then we've got 2020. Like, no, we didn't need that. Like, this is too much for our bodies right now. And so, and this is a time where we really, I think, plant medicine, like adaptogens, I mean, I think particularly adaptogens, I think there's a reason that they're trending is because it's something that the world really needs. And, if you look at it from the plant consciousness perspective, they might be arising in their own kind of way to be like, hello, humans, I'm here. I'm here to help you. You need me, especially right now. You guys are nuts.
I really feel that the plants are giving us they give us so much, and they are very alive and supporting us in so many ways. And, in herbs, medicinal herbs, and many drugs are synthesized from plants, other than they just try to imitate them, but
yeah,
or think that they're making them stronger. But plants in themselves are so, you think about homeopathics and just the essence or the essential oils, and how really powerful they are. So yeah, I'm your products are awesome. Just to give the products a little plug here, Rasta is just a beautiful line of high quality adaptogenic coffee kind of alternatives that taste great too. So
yeah.
That's nice. So back to this, about dealing with stress, and we were talking about breath and started going there a little bit. I'm wondering if you can offer an experience, a tool for folks to, help navigate during this time.
Absolutely. Got a couple of favorites. So one of the things that I've been working with a lot myself lately that's been actually life-changing in terms of how I'm able to navigate stress is vagal nerve toning. And so the vagus nerve is one of the largest nerves in the body. And the vagus nerve toning and the effects that it has on your body and your nervous system is a little bit understood in a bit of an expansion on an old maxim about our nervous system that's a little bit outdated. And that's the idea that we only have two phases, which are fight or flight and rest and digest. The fight or flight being the sympathetic nervous system and the rest and digest being the parasympathetic nervous system. Those still stand true, but it doesn't account for this whole other piece of our humanity, which is our urge to connect, our urge to be social, our urge to care for each other. And that is mitigated by the vagus nerve. And what they call it, that is the social engagement part of your nervous system. So there's fight or flight, sympathetic, rest and digest, parasympathetic, and then there's the vagal system, which is your social engagement. And when your vagus nerve is toned, when you're in social engagement, you are naturally inclined towards taking care of others. You're naturally acting out of your best interests. You're naturally taking care of yourself and taking care of others. It's our will to communicate. It's our will to connect. It's our will to, the things that really make us human. The fight or flight and rest and digest sort of puts us on an animalian kind of spectrum. And there is this whole other aspect. It's the will towards self-knowledge and self-understanding. So when when our vagus nerve is over facilitated or under facilitated, that's when, you might do things that are self-sabotaging and you might not even really realize it. And that's, your vagus nerve is sort of out of whack. And there's a super simple exercise that you can do. It takes 90 seconds max to tone your vagus nerve. And this is something that I do anytime that I notice that tightness that's kind of coming in, where I'm starting to get like, and my breath is getting shallow, and I start to feel that. And this was instrumental in me actually down patterning my nervous system overall. Just in, like, it probably took, the first time I did it, from the first time until probably the 10th time that I did it, over like a 4-day period. I probably did it 3 times a day or something like that. It was like I suddenly felt everything in my nervous system, my baseline coming down, and just feeling more relaxed and capable and able to ride the waves. So it's super simple. All you do is it's best if you do this lying down, but that's awkward when we're on a call. You can totally also do it.
I can go lie down.
Okay, cool.
And everybody here can go lie down.
Yes. All right. And I'll do it from here just so you guys can see me. You can also do it sitting up. And I have my team. We actually start our weekly calls as a team doing this. Well, so all you do is you want to clasp your hands behind your head, and you want your pointer to be right at the bottom of your skull, that part where it starts to get soft, the occipital ridge. And then you're going to keep your head facing straight, and you're just going to turn your eyes all the way to the right. And we're going to stay there for 30 to 60 seconds until you either yawn, sigh, or swallow. The first few times I did it, I sighed. And the sigh is just like where you inhale and you kind of take another inhale naturally. And the reason that this works, I'm probably not going to yawn because I'm talking, which is totally fine, but my normal pattern is to yawn. But the reason that this works is that the occipital nerves, which are connected to your eyes, and the occipital muscles are connected to your occiput, the first vertebra, and to your vagus nerve. And so when you turn your eyes all the way, if you can feel those muscles back there ever so slightly tightening up. And that stimulates the vagus nerve. There's the sigh. And then whenever you have that yawn or sigh or swallow, you're just gonna look back center, and no hurry on this. It usually takes about 30 to 60 seconds. As you do it more, it gets a lot faster. And then after you've looked center, just to kind of center yourself a little bit, then you look all the way to the left. Again, still keeping your head facing straight forward. And what I find is that sometimes when I yawn, I won't get that full satisfying yawn. And if I kind of stick with it and keep going for a little while longer, I'll get that really full yawn. And that's where I'll feel that really significant nervous system down patterning. And it's totally normal to feel a little bit dizzy when that happens. There's some things that happen with your, I'm going to forget the word right now, but it's because I'm feeling a little dizzy.
Wow.
And then another important thing just to notice is what's different. And just every time you do that, just take one moment to be like, oh, something's subtly or profoundly different there. And then that noticing also helps to pattern it creates this little imprint where you're consciously aware of the change that you made, and that inspires you to do it more naturally.
That was amazing, actually. The vagal nerve
Toning.
toning,
Yeah.
that was really amazing. It was almost immediate. And what
Yes.
I did notice though is that my head wanted to turn.
Yes. It may want to, because we're very patterned around that. We don't do a lot
Right,
of this.
right.
Um, but also eye exercises are another good way to
Oh yeah.
age the
I
vagus
used to do
nerve.
them back in the day.
That-
This was fabulous. My system feels so much more grounded, and I just I feel so much more relaxed.
Great.
Yeah.
Can I add one little piece to the experience bit, just in terms of serving people and finding that resilience? The other, I was talking about presence being the number one tool that I know of for resilience, and breath being the number one tool I know of for presence. And one thing, people say like, okay, yeah, I breathe and then I forget. And then, we all do that. And there's a, a meditative practice that you can do while you're going throughout your day, which is called second attention. And so we have our first attention on whatever we're doing, I'm talking to you, but I can also have this other subtle level of awareness on my breath, or as I'm talking, that one's a little harder for me. So I can also put it just on my body and the fact that I'm in a body. And I think so often we forget that we're in a body. Like I'm on the computer, I'm like, oh yeah, I have feet. Fascinating. um, I usually use breath as a second attention because it is this very easy access point, and it gives me this opportunity to breathe a little bit deeper. But bodily awareness is another thing that you can do. And cultivating second attention is another one of those things. It's just about, it's a muscle. You build this muscle and you just start being aware of your breath. And when you're aware of your breath, you're taking breath is an action that can be voluntary or involuntary. You're taking it from the involuntary and putting it into the voluntary, which in a way is telling your nervous system, like, I've got this, and that helps to activate and give us more access to that parasympathetic nervous system. So cultivating second attention, where you just, as you go about your day, have an awareness of your breath. And if you can, have an awareness of breathing a little bit deeper than you normally would, because most of us use only about 10% of our breath capacity in most of our breaths during the day. So breathing a little bit more into the bottoms of the lungs and having that be an awareness that you take with you throughout the day. And you can do that. And a great way, a trigger to remember that. There's all sorts of triggers because we forget. You're going to forget maybe 1,000 times a day. If you remember 1,000 times a day, then there you go. But there's lots of stories of people being like, oh yeah, second attention, that's great, I'll remember that. And then like a week later, they're like, wow, not even once. But if you are triggering, when you have stress and you're feeling that tightness in your chest, however stress manifests, I've been noticing a lot in tightness in my chest and a little knot in my solar plexus, do the vagal nerve toning. And then that's already repatterning your system to come down a bit and be able to handle the stress better. And then the vagal nerve toning becomes the trigger to be like, oh yeah, remember to breathe. And then just keep coming back to that as much as you can throughout the day. And the energy that you get from actually staying present, because the second attention it's like a tether to awareness. It's a tether to presence in your life. And that is actually a fantastic tool for cultivating energy. Because dissociation actually takes a lot of energy to get out of where we are and to resist things and to fight things. And so as you stay more present, it cultivates your ability to accept reality as it is. It cultivates your energy to be able to change the things that you want to change in your life, in the world, and to be that change that you want to see in the world. So vagal nerve toning and second attention on the breath or bodily sensation, two of the best practices that I know to take care of ourselves in modern life. And adaptogens taking those on a regular basis can help to give us that, like, even 5% of buffer so that we can actually access and remember to do those things, because we have to remember to remember. And that's one of the most important things. And just in case there are people who are watching who are like, okay, you've said adaptogens like 17 times, and what the heck are they? Um, they're a class of herbs, which you've probably figured out by now, but they work by actually mimicking stress in the body. And I know you're probably like, you might be listening to that and be like, why do I want to mimic stress? I have plenty. But in this case, it's a stressor. It's a good stressor. EU is the Greek prefix for good, like exercise. It's literally like exercising your body. When it's stressful for your biceps to do bicep curls, but it is great for them because it strengthens them and it builds their resilience. And the same adaptogens are doing the same to the two main stress pathways in your body, which are the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal system and your sympathoadrenal axis. So these are the main sort of pathways for the core system of your body, which is the neuroendocrine system. Your neuroendocrine system is the one that informs and governs and supports and guides all the rest. It's the master system of your body. So adaptogens strengthen how the stress response lives in that system, and therefore makes everything happen easier. It improves digestion, it improves immune system, it improves all of it because it's actually dealing with how your body handles the stress of life. So these herbs work on that level. Taking them on a regular basis actually tones and cultivates your resilience and builds the strength and the flexibility and the resilience. Like when I think of resilience, it's like, it's a little bit like bounciness, you know, like you want that in your muscles. You want that sense of like, I get stressed, I come back down, I go up, I go down. And that process being like, not like a spike up and down, but a bit of a bouncy and resilient, I think, for lack of a better word to describe it, a resilient process for your body. So yeah, taking adaptogens can give you that little bit of buffer so that you're handling the stress better, so you can then make the choices like toning your vagus nerve, like having a second attention practice on your breath, so that you can build and cultivate energy and resilience, which I feel like energy and acceptance are kind of the two wings of the bird for having resilience.
Beautiful. Would you share just some examples of adaptogenic herbs?
Sure. So it's important to note that adaptogens are actually a scientific term and not a marketing term, and they have come to be used as a marketing term. And so there are a lot of things that are called adaptogens that are not. That doesn't make them not great plants in their own right and have, medicine of their own right. But if I said something was CBD and it wasn't, like, that's,
right,
mismessaging, and you're going to start having a misconstruing of what these plants are actually doing for you. So important to be educated and just be aware. There's actually only 9 or 12, depending on who you talk to, which scientists you're going by, but actual definite adaptogens. And then there's about 30 others that are probable adaptogens. The science isn't quite there to prove 100% that they are, but they are probably adaptogens as well. The ones that are in rasa are the ones that I'm most familiar with. Of course, there's 7 in rasa. Well, depends on which blend, but eleuthero is a very common one. That's an energizing adaptogen, fantastic for the nervous system. It's the original adaptogen that was first researched in the 1940s, 1950s by some Russian scientists who were looking to give Russian soldiers and super athletes like an edge without the crash. And then they discovered, like, okay, these herbs, these are the ones. And they did 3,000 studies on eleuthero. It was amazing. And then they lost their funding, which was terrible. But politics. So eleuthero is an energizing adaptogen. It's the original adaptogen. Rhodiola is another common one that's also energizing. Ashwagandha is a very well-known one. That's more, so adaptogens all have to have this impact on the neuroendocrine system, but they all have their different flavors and their different ways that they interact with the body. So eleuthero and rhodiola are classic energizing adaptogens, but ashwagandha is a classic calming adaptogen. So that's one that's commonly used, before bed to calm the nervous system, tone the nervous system. Cotonopsis and Hasho Wu are two Chinese medicine adaptogens that are very famous longevity tonics. So those are helping to build those deep reserves of energy and to nourish that level of vitality and that deeper energy that's much more below our normal relationship to energy is kind of this on-off switch. It's that the afterburners, that bolstering from that deep level. Reishi is another one. A lot of mushrooms are often called adaptogens, and they aren't. The only two mushrooms that are actually adaptogens are cordyceps and reishi. Chaga, lion's mane, all fantastic mushrooms, not adaptogens. They do not have that impact on your neuroendocrine system. But cordyceps and reishi are fantastic herbs, and cordyceps is found in rasa bold. Reishi is found in all the rasas.
Awesome. Oh, I love that. That I think is a very useful information for folks, because there is so much that's said, it has certain effects. And I didn't know that about how it wasn't a marketing. Well, I knew it was, just the, what do I want to say? The category of medicinals that I didn't realize that it just kind of came over into the marketing world that way, and that people use it a lot. They are using that phrase quite a bit. Yeah,
you see it on, common things that are labeled adaptogens that aren't are things like, I talked about the mushrooms, chaga, lion's mane, not. I've seen goji called an adaptogen. Turmeric is also not an adaptogen. CBD, pearl powder, matcha, a lot of things that are actually superfoods get just kind of, and I think, it's ignorance, and it's a lack of available good information. And that's something that we want to switch at Rasa, is to, just make a lot of information available so that people just can be educated and be aware and be smart consumers, and the challenge, like adaptogens are because they grow in such extreme contexts, they tend to be pretty expensive to harvest and to get. And so they tend to be pretty expensive herbs. And I think, it's also easy for some business people to be like, oh yeah, turmeric, it's really good for you and it does all these things, so it must be an adaptogen. And hey, adaptogens sell for so much money, so we should go ahead and sell it for the market rate, right? And I think there's this dovetail of this ripple effect of ignorance fundamentally, that I don't think is necessarily malicious. It's just
we also use reishi, so I really, anyway, it's a great ingredient. So we're going to start our close here, and I'm wondering if you have anything else you would like to share with the audience here.
I think I'd just like to reiterate to remember. Yeah. And that and then ride the positive spirals, the virtuous circles. When you make one good action, and that could be starting your day with adaptogens, that could be drinking a Beyond broth, like a healthy, nourishing, uplifting broth instead of going for a soda or something. Like all of those little choices that we make can be an upward spiral towards greater and greater lifestyle changes, which allow us to just be like, the human potential is so vast. And I think so many of us exist in a pretty small range of that. And modern society sort of forces us, and the stresses of society, like when we're stressed, we're in a pretty narrow range of our potential. And so when we can get out of that stress range, we have so much more capability for that kindness, for that goodness that the world really especially needs right now. So do it for yourself, and do it to be able to serve others, because we need you.
Yes. Oh, beautiful. Well, Lopa, thank you so much for this time that we got to share together. And thank you everyone for joining us here. This is just beautiful experience to just be sharing, and many blessings to you and everybody out there. Stay well, and thank you for being here.